Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Girls, please, just one bite, just one, pleaded the housekeeper, her apron stained with mashed potatoes. The 4-year-old twins sat at the breakfast table like two little ice sculptures, with their arms crossed and eyes half closed. Sophie and Ava looked ready for a full-on toddler rebellion. That's when the kitchen door opened, and in came Lila Bennett, 28 years old, worn-out jeans, messy bun, and a pair of glitter sneakers that definitely didn't match the Harrison mansion. "Good morning," she announced with a smile so bright it seemed lit from within. "I got here early, and I'm starving. Got any coffee?" The housekeeper raised her eyebrows in surprise. "You are the nanny, the new one. First day. Lila, nice to meet you," she said enthusiastically, extending her hand. Only the housekeeper shook it. The twins remained frozen in place like two wary gargoyles. "They haven't eaten anything since yesterday," the housekeeper whispered. "Mr. Harrison is going to lose it if he finds out they skipped another meal." Lila put her hands on her hips, surveying the scene. "All right, leave it to me." Without asking, she opened the fridge like she owned the place and started pulling out eggs, milk, flour, and a tub of expired whipped cream, which she discreetly put back. Within minutes, the kitchen was filled with the smell of pancakes and music. Yes, Lila had set her phone on the counter and was cooking to the sound of the Beatles' twist and shout, and what she did next, no one would ever forget. "Showtime," she shouted, flipping a pancake into the air and breaking into a dance. But not just any dance. She took huge, exaggerated steps, spun like she was on a Broadway stage, and suddenly tucked a frying pan on each hip like they were castanets. The twins glanced at each other, then a sound not heard in the mansion for ages broke out. Giggles. "Do it again. Do it again." Ava clapped her hands. "The pancake's dancing," Sophie chimed in. Lila winked. "I'll only dance if you eat. That's the deal." The girls exchanged another look. The battle was officially over. They picked up their forks and took the first bite. The housekeeper nearly cried. Upstairs, James Harrison was reviewing documents in his minimalist office, dark suit, rectangular glasses, perfectly groomed hair, the coldest man in the Northern Hemisphere. The muffled sounds of music and laughter drifting up from the kitchen made his eyebrow arch. Ever since his wife had passed away, the twins had become withdrawn, stubborn, and utterly resistant to any nanny. 7 had been dismissed in less than 3 months. "Sven," he pressed the intercom button. "Mrs. Carter, why is there music in the kitchen?" Still trembling with emotion from the pancake miracle, the housekeeper replied, "Excited. Sir, the girls are eating the new nanny. She danced with a frying pan." Silence on the line. "She did what?" "Dancing pancakes, sir, and they ate." James frowned. He grabbed his jacket and headed downstairs. When James walked into the kitchen, he expected chaos. Instead, he found something far more unsettling. 2 happy little girls with honey-smeared faces and a woman twirling a pancake on her finger like a basketball. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice firm and cool. Lila stopped spinning the pancake but didn't seem fazed. "Good morning to you too, boss man. Want a dancing pancake?" The twins burst out laughing. James did not. "You're the new nanny. Flesh, bone, and glitter," she replied, pointing at her sneakers. He studied her for a long moment. He'd expected a reserved, proper professional who wore a uniform and addressed the children as Miss, not someone who played the Beatles and put on impromptu pancake shows. "I require discipline, responsibility, and silence," he said. "Great. I require coffee, respect for pancakes, and that no one dies of boredom before lunch," she shot back with a cheeky smile. The twins choked with laughter. James had neither the time for arguments nor the patience for defiance. He turned on his heel and climbed the stairs, but before he disappeared, he cast one last glance at his daughters. They were smiling, and that, he had to admit, was new. Later, while clearing the table, Lila found a drawing Sophie had left behind, a stick-figure sketch of herself, Ava, and Lila holding hands. Above it, in crooked letters, was written, "Magic Nanny." Lila held the paper gently and murmured, "You're going to keep me on my toes, little enchanted twins." But what she didn't know yet was that the real problem was upstairs, wearing a gray tie, a serious face, and a heart locked up tight. And he had no idea that the nanny was about to turn his whole world upside down. On Lila's second morning at the Harrison mansion, the kitchen was already unrecognizable. Where there had once been silence, there was now the sound of children laughing, And here comes the sun playing from the dusty phone she had brought from home. "Today is magical breakfast day," Lila announced, walking into the kitchen wearing a little pink apron she'd found in the housekeeper's closet. "Who wants dancing scrambled eggs?" Sophie and Ava, still in unicorn pajamas, clapped excitedly. It was hard to believe they were the same quiet children from just 3 days ago. "How do the eggs dance?" Ava asked, climbing up on a chair, her eyes shining with curiosity. "Oh, that's a top secret," Lila whispered with a playful look, "but I'll tell just you two. We add a little love seasoning, stir to the rhythm of the music, and there you go. Dancing eggs." Mrs. Carter, watching from the pantry door, couldn't hide her smile. In her 40 years working in the house, she had never seen the girls so excited at mealtime. "Miss Lila," Carter said, walking in with a steaming cup of coffee, "the gardener is asking if we can turn the music down a bit. He said the neighbors were talking." "The neighbors?" Lila stopped stirring the eggs and turned around. Curious, what did they say? That for the first time in months, they heard laughter coming from this house, Carter replied, her eyes misty, "and that it's a lovely sound." Lila felt her chest tighten. She took the housekeeper's hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "Then let's keep making good noise, okay?" At 10:00 the morning, when James came down to grab some papers he'd forgotten in his office, he found the living room looking like something out of a kid's movie. Pillows on the floor had become a castle. The curtains were now secret caves. And Lila sat in the middle of it all, telling a story with a different voice for every character. "And then Princess Ava grabbed her magic wand," Lila said, waving a wooden spoon, "and turned all the mean dragons into fluffy kittens." The twins burst out laughing, rolling on the pillows. James stopped in the doorway, watching. His spotless, always organized living room was completely turned upside down, and he should have been annoyed, but there was something mesmerizing about the way his daughters interacted with Lila, like she was a bridge to a world they had forgotten how to enter. "Mr. Harrison," Lila noticed him and waved cheerfully. "Want to join the story? I need someone to play the brave king." "No, thank you," he said flatly. "Just came to get some papers. Daddy, stay." "Aunt Lila does funny voices," Sophie said, running up to him. James felt a tightness in his chest. It had been so long since Sophie had asked him to play. "Maybe another time, sweetheart. Daddy has to work." Sophie's smile faded a little, and James hated himself for it. Later, at lunchtime, Lila turned eating salad into a journey through the enchanted forest, where each lettuce leaf was a magic leaf, and each carrot an energy potion. The girls ate the whole salad, something not even their own mother had managed when she was alive. "How do you do that?" asked Miguel, the family's driver, watching through the kitchen window. "Do what?" Lila replied, wiping dressing off the twins' faces. "Make them smile like that. Eat without arguing. They seem like regular kids." Lila stopped what she was doing and looked at him. "They are regular kids, Miguel. They just needed someone to remind them of that." That afternoon, while the girls were napping, the staff gathered in the kitchen like they hadn't in months. Carter made coffee. Miguel brought cookies his wife had baked, and even Elena, the shiest housekeeper in the house, joined the group. "She's different," Elena murmured, stirring sugar into her coffee. "She makes the house feel alive." "The girls have changed in just 2 days," Miguel agreed. "Yesterday, Sophie showed me a drawing she made. First time she's drawn anything since. Well, since the accident." Carter nodded solemnly. "Mr. Harrison's changed, too. He's more present. He came downstairs 3 times today just to get papers. He's never done that before." "Do you think he likes her?" Elena whispered. "Elena," Carter scolded, "we shouldn't speculate about the boss's personal life." But everyone smiled quietly. Late in the afternoon, James was in his office when he heard noise coming from the garden. He looked out the window and saw Lila teaching the twins how to play a treasure hunt among the rose bushes. She had painted colorful little stones and scattered them around the lawn, turning the carefully maintained garden into a playground. When the game ended and the girls went in for their bath, James came downstairs to talk to Lila. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice formal. "Of course," she replied, still picking up the colorful stones. "What is it? Did the girls make too much of a mess?" "It's not about that." James took a deep breath. For 2 days, he had watched this woman turn his house upside down. Loud music, constant mess, shouting, laughter, everything he couldn't stand, everything he secretly had started to miss when it wasn't there. "You have 1 week, he finally said. 1 week for what?" To prove you're not just another disappointment, Lila stopped picking up the stones and looked at him. Sorry, but disappointment? 7 nannies before you, every single one promised they were exactly what the girls needed. Every one of them failed. Everyone left the girls more closed off than before. James crossed his arms, slipping into his cold executive posture. You've been here 2 days and already turned my house inside out. Loud music. Mess everywhere. My garden full of painted stones. If that's your method, I need to see real results, not just temporary fun. Lila was quiet for a moment, thinking it over. And what do you consider real results? That they become the kids they were before. He hesitated. Before they lost their mother. That they eat without needing a performance. That they sleep without nightmares. That they're not afraid of strangers. That they're normal. Lila nodded slowly. Then give me that week. But under one condition. James raised an eyebrow. You don't interfere. No meetings. No comments about my music or my mess. Just let me work. And if it doesn't work, if after 1 week you still think I'm another disappointment, she said, slipping the last little stone into her pocket, I'll pack my bags myself. James studied her for a long moment. There was something about her, confidence mixed with vulnerability, that caught his attention. 1 week, he said, then turned to leave but paused. Lila, they really are different. That's good. And for the first time since she arrived, Lila saw something different in his eyes. It wasn't coldness. It was fear. Fear of hope. Saturday morning began with a strange sound at the Harrison mansion. Silence. James woke up at 6 a.m., as usual, but didn't hear any music coming from the kitchen. No laughter. No sound of frying pans being used as musical instruments. Worried, though he would never admit it, he went downstairs in his robe to see what was going on. He found Lila in the living room, still in her pajamas, sitting on the floor with a book in her lap. The twins were on either side of her, also in pajamas, listening closely as she read, using a different voice for each character. Good morning, boss. Lila said without looking up from the book, You're just in time for the story about the princess who saved the whole kingdom with math. Daddy! Sophie jumped up and ran to hug his legs. Aunt Lila's reading the best story ever. It's about a princess who builds castles with numbers, Ava added, waving excitedly but staying in place. James looked around. The room was tidy, the pillows arranged in a circle, and a tray of cut-up fruit sat in the center. Everything felt cozy. It's Saturday, he said, as if that explained his confusion. Exactly, Lila replied, closing the book. And Saturdays are special. No rush, no schedule, no sweets. James looked down and realized he was, in fact, wearing a robe and slippers. He suddenly felt oddly out of place. Daddy, can you stay with us today? Sophie asked, still clinging to his leg. No work. Just play. The question hit James like a punch to the stomach. When was the last time he'd spent an entire day with his daughters? When was the last time he didn't think about work, reports, meetings? I have a few documents to go over. Oh, please, Lila cried out, standing and putting her hands on her hips. It's Saturday. Documents are forbidden on Saturdays. Forbidden? James raised an eyebrow. Universal law, she answered seriously. Article 1. No one can work when 2 beautiful girls are asking for attention. Article 2. Pajamas are the required uniform. Article 3. Fun is top priority. The twins giggled. I don't wear pajamas during the day, James said, clearly uncomfortable. Great. Lila clapped her hands. Then today is your debut. Sophie, Ava, launch Operation Daddy in Pajamas. Before James could protest, the 2 girls grabbed his hands and started pulling him up the stairs. Girls, I really don't think. Please, Daddy, Ava begged. Aunt Lila said today is a special family day. James stopped halfway up the stairs. Family. The word echoed in his mind in a way it hadn't in a long time. Half an hour later, James came down wearing gray sweatpants and a plain t-shirt, clothes he had found in the back of his closet and probably hadn't worn in years. He felt ridiculous and strangely comfortable. Look at you, Lila exclaimed when she saw him. Now you really look like a dad. I've always been a real dad, he replied, a little defensive. Of course you have, she said more softly, but now you look like a dad who has time. The words completely disarmed him. So Lila continued, clapping her hands. What do the 3 of you want to do on Pajama Saturday? Build something, Ava shouted. Draw, Sophia shouted. Have coffee, James muttered, still trying to adjust to the situation. Lila laughed. Perfect. We'll do all of it. First coffee. Then each of you does what you enjoy most. And in the end, everyone shows what they made. How about that? And so James found himself sitting on the floor of the playroom, something he hadn't done since the girls were babies. Ava was surrounded by Lego pieces, building something she insisted on calling her battle robot against sadness. Sophie had colored pencils scattered all around, drawing with the focus of a professional artist. "What are you building, Ava?" James asked, genuinely curious. "It's a robot that detects when people are sad and tickles them until they laugh," she explained, attaching a red piece. "Look, these are the tickle arms, and this is the sadness detector antenna." James was amazed at his daughter's complex creation. When had she become so creative? "And you, Sophie? What are you drawing?" "It's a surprise," she replied, covering the paper with her hands. "But I can make a special drawing just for you, Daddy." "You can? What would you like me to draw?" James thought for a moment. When was the last time anyone had asked him what he wanted? "Draw what makes you happy." Sophie smiled and picked up a fresh sheet of paper. She began drawing with quick, sure strokes, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Meanwhile, Leela sat down beside James. "How are you feeling?" she asked quietly. "Strange," he admitted. "I can't remember the last time I was this unscheduled. It's scary, isn't it? Not having something to control." James looked at her, surprised by her insight. "How do you know?" "Because you keep touching your wrist like you're checking a watch, even though you're not wearing one." James glanced down and realized he was fidgeting with his bare wrist. "It'll pass," Lila said. "That feeling that you should be doing something productive. Playing with your daughters is the most productive thing you can do." At that moment, Sophie got up from the table. "All done," she announced, handing James the drawing. James took the paper, and his world stopped. The drawing showed 3 stick figures in front of a big house. A short one with curly hair, Sophie. Another short one with a ponytail, Ava. And a taller one with long hair and a huge smile, Lila. They were holding hands, and underneath, in crooked letters, it said, "My happy family." James swallowed hard. Where was he in his own daughter's drawing? "Sophie," he said, his voice a little hoarse. "Where's Daddy?" "Oh." She grabbed a brown crayon. "I forgot. Daddy's always working, so I couldn't draw him." The words hit James like a slap in the face. "But I can draw you now," Sophie added cheerfully, completely unaware of the impact of her words. "How should I draw you? In a suit or in pajamas?" James sat silently for a long moment, staring at the picture. 3 happy people. His daughter had drawn her family, and he wasn't in it. "In pajamas," he said finally. "Draw me in pajamas." Sophie smiled and began drawing a 4th figure next to the others. When she finished, she held it up. A tall man in sweatpants holding hands with the other 3 figures. "There," she said, pleased. "Now our family is complete." James took the drawing and studied it again. 4 people holding hands. 4 happy people. He looked up and met Lila's gaze. She said nothing, but James saw understanding in her eyes and something more. Something that made him feel that maybe, just maybe, he had been missing far more than work on this pajama Saturday. "Can I keep this drawing?" he asked Sophie. "Of course, Daddy. I can make more." James carefully folded the paper and tucked it into his sweatshirt pocket. "Thank you, sweetheart. It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen." And for the first time in a long while, James wished the weekend could last forever. Monday came with a different energy at the Harrison mansion. After Pajama Saturday, the twins seemed even more connected to Lila, and even James had started coming down to have breakfast with them, something unthinkable just a week ago. "Tonight is special dinner night," Lila announced at lunchtime, her eyes shining with excitement. "I'm going to make a recipe I learned from my Mexican grandmother." "Mexican?" Ava asked, intrigued. "Yes, chicken and melted cheese quesadillas, rice with seasoned beans, and fresh guacamole." Sophie and Ava exchanged excited glances. Anything that came from Lila's hands felt like a celebration. "You're going to love it," Lila went on. "It's food that feels like a hug from the inside." James, who was passing through the kitchen at that moment, stopped to listen. "Mexican food?" he asked, sounding a little unsure. "Relax, boss. It's not spicy, just flavorful and made with love." "My mother is coming for dinner tonight," he said, suddenly remembering she doesn't usually try different kinds of food. Lila shrugged. "Then it will be a good chance for her to broaden her horizons, right?" James felt a knot in his stomach. His mother, Eleanor Harrison, was a 72-year-old woman, very traditional, with strong opinions about how things should be done. Since his wife's death, she had been coming over once a week for dinner to make sure the girls were being raised properly. "Maybe it's better to make something a little more traditional," he suggested. "Daddy, We want Aunt Lila's food, Sophie protested. Yeah, she promised, Ava added. Lila crossed her arms and looked straight at James. You said I had a week to show results. Let me do things my way. James sighed. He knew he was in trouble. At exactly 0 inches the evening, Eleanor Harrison arrived, tall, elegant, with gray hair in a flawless bun and a navy blue suit that probably cost more than Lila's monthly salary. James, dear, she said, kissing her son's cheek, how are my granddaughters? Better than ever, Mom. The new nanny has been doing an exceptional job. Oh yes, I heard about her. Where did you find her? Which agency recommended her? Actually, she was referred by Dr. Lopez. She has a more modern approach. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. When they entered the dining room, the table was set with colorful plates, floral paper napkins, and a wonderful aroma coming from the kitchen. Grandma! The twins shouted in unison, running to hug her. My sweet girls, Eleanor said, hugging them with genuine warmth. How are you? Aunt Lila made Mexican food, Ava announced. It's the best ever, Sophie added. Eleanor looked at James with a familiar expression, quiet disapproval. Just then, Lila appeared, carrying a steaming platter. Good evening, she said with a warm smile. You must be Mrs. Harrison. I'm the girl's nanny. It's a pleasure to meet you. Eleanor looked her over from head to toe. Lila wore a simple cotton dress, her hair tied back in a casual ponytail. Good evening, Eleanor replied coolly. So, you're the nanny? That's right, and I prepared a special dinner for tonight. I hope you enjoy it. Lila served the quesadillas, seasoned rice, and guacamole with contagious enthusiasm. The twins immediately started eating, making happy sounds. This is so good, Aunt Lila, Sophie said with her mouth full. The cheese melts in your mouth, Ava agreed. James tasted it, and had to admit it was really delicious, flavorful, well seasoned with a homemade touch he hadn't felt in a long time. Eleanor, however, poked at the food with her fork as if it were suspicious. It's interesting, she said, taking a small bite. Where did you learn to cook like this? From my grandmother. Lila answered excitedly. She came from Mexico when she was young and taught me all the secrets of Mexican cooking. She always said food made with love has a special taste. I see. And what is your academic background? Lila stopped eating, sensing the interrogative tone. I graduated high school and took some courses in child development. Some courses, Eleanor repeated with thinly veiled disdain. So, no formal education then. The atmosphere grew tense. James noticed the change and tried to step in. Mom, Lila has been doing an exceptional job with the girls. James, dear, I know you want the best for them, Eleanor continued, ignoring him, but they need someone with proper education, someone who can teach good manners, etiquette, prepare appropriate meals. The girls are eating better than ever, Lila said, trying to stay calm. Mexican food isn't appropriate for well-raised children, Eleanor snapped. They need to learn to appreciate fine cuisine. Not this. Lila felt her cheeks burn but took a deep breath. With all due respect, Mrs. Harrison, the girls had eating issues when I arrived. Now they eat with joy and are open to trying new flavors. Eating issues? Eleanor turned to James. Why wasn't I informed? Mom, it wasn't anything serious. They barely touched their food. Eleanor raised her voice. And you trust someone with no formal education to fix that with exotic food? It's not exotic. It's homemade, Lila said, struggling to keep her patience. Young lady, you clearly don't understand the needs of a family of high standing. These children need structure, discipline, proper education, not games and street food. The silence in the room was deafening. The twins had stopped eating and were looking at the adults. Confused, Lila's eyes stung, but she refused to cry in front of that woman. Mrs. Harrison, she said, her voice trembling but steady, I may not have a college degree, but I know how to care for children, and I know how to make them smile. Smiling isn't enough, Eleanor countered. They need real education, not someone spoiling them with. That's enough. James's voice cut through the air like a blade. He stood up, eyes burning with anger. Mom, stop right now. James, I'm only trying to... You're humiliating the woman who brought my daughters back to life, he said with a firmness that surprised even himself. The woman who did what 7 qualified nannies couldn't. Eleanor's mouth fell open. Lila may not have a diploma on the wall, but she has something far more valuable. She genuinely cares. And the girls adore her. James, I'm not finished, he interrupted. Over the past few days, I've seen my daughters laugh, play, eat happily, I've seen them run to hug me when I get home. I've seen them draw pictures of our happy family. And it's all thanks to Lila." He turned to his mother. "I study. So, with all due respect, Mom, I'm the one in charge here. And I say Lila stays." Eleanor looked at her son like she didn't recognize him. "James Harrison, you're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was letting others decide what was best for my daughters for far too long." Lila stood still, trying to process what had just happened. James had defended her publicly against his own mother. "Aunt Lila," Sophie whispered, tugging at her sleeve, "you're not leaving, right?" Lila looked down at the little girl, then at James, who was watching her with an intensity she didn't know how to read. "No, sweetheart," she finally said, "I'm not leaving." Eleanor stood, grabbed her purse, and looked at her son one last time. "When this house of cards falls apart, don't come running to me for advice." And she walked out, leaving behind a heavy silence. James sat back down, his hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry about that," he said to Lila. "Thank you," she replied simply. And in that moment, something shifted between them, something neither of them was quite ready to face. 3 days after that tense dinner with Eleanor, the Harrison mansion had returned to its cheerful routine. James seemed more at ease after the confrontation with his mother, and the twins continued to blossom under Lila's care. It was a sunny Wednesday morning when Sophie tugged at Lila's sleeve in the kitchen. "Aunt Lila, do you want to see our secret place?" she whispered, glancing around like she was about to reveal hidden treasure. "Secret place?" Lila knelt down to her level. "What kind of secret place?" "It's where we keep our special things," Ava said, appearing out of nowhere, her eyes sparkling with mystery. "We've never shown anyone, not even your dad?" Lila asked. Both girls shook their heads seriously. "It's just ours," Sophie declared. "But you can see it because you're special." Lila's heart melted. Being called special by those 2 little girls was one of the most precious gifts she had ever received. "Then show me this magical place." The twins led her out into the garden, past the carefully tended rose bushes and the marble fountain. They walked to a more hidden area, where a large tree cast a cool, shady spot. "Here it is," Ava announced, pointing to the base of the tree. Sophie knelt down and began digging with her small hands in the soft earth between the roots. Within seconds, she pulled out a blue metal box about the size of a cookie tin. "Our treasure box," she said, holding it as if it were made of gold. Lila sat down on the grass next to the girls, touched and curious to be included in something so personal. "Can I see what's inside?" The twins exchanged a solemn look and nodded. Sophie opened the lid of the little box, revealing its carefully arranged contents. Lila felt her breath catch. Inside were photographs of a beautiful woman with blonde hair and a radiant smile. Some were professional photos. Others were casual snapshots. The woman playing with the twins when they were younger, hugging James at a social event, laughing during a picnic. "This is our mommy," Ava said, holding one of the photos with reverence. "She was the most beautiful in the world. And the coolest too," Sophie added, pulling a crumpled letter from the box. "Look, this is the letter I wrote to her last week." Lila carefully unfolded the paper. In the crooked handwriting of a child, Sophie had written, "Dear Mommy, today Aunt Lila made pancakes. You would like her. She's funny like you were. I hope you come back soon to meet her. Love, Sophie." Lila's chest tightened. "And this one's my letter," Ava said, holding up another paper. "I told Mommy about my new robot. She always liked my robots." Lila read Ava's letter, which ended with, "Daddy's happier now. I think it's because Aunt Lila makes him smile, too. When you come back, you two will be friends." There was more in the box. Colorful drawings addressed to Mommy, tiny dried flowers the girls had collected, and even a recent photo of them with Lila kept alongside their memories of their mother. "We come here every week," Sophie explained, "to tell Mommy about our days. And we leave the letters here for when she comes back," Ava added. "Then she can read everything all at once." Lila felt her eyes fill with tears. These 2 little girls were living with the hope that their mother would one day return, as if she had only traveled somewhere far away. "Girls," she said gently, choosing her words with care, "you know that Mommy can't come back, right?" "Yes, she can," Sophie protested immediately. "She's just in heaven visiting the angels. One day, she'll finish her visit and come home. Daddy said she's watching over us from up there," Ava said, "but we know she wants to come back to take care of us up close." Lila took a deep breath. She knew she had to be delicate but also honest. "My loves, when someone goes to heaven, it's because they can't stay here on earth anymore." It's like a trip with no return. No, Sophie cried, clutching the photo of her mother to her chest. She promised she would never leave us, and she didn't, Lila said, moving closer. She's here in the love you feel, in the beautiful memories you have of her, in the way you smile just like she did. But we want her here for real, Ava sobbed. We want her to make pancakes with us too. I know, sweethearts. I know it hurts so much. But sometimes the people we love have to go away, even when we don't want them to. And that's no one's fault. Are you going to leave too? Sophie asked, her little face wet with tears. No, darling, I'm here. And I'll stay as long as you. You have no right to bring this up. James's cold voice cut through the air like a blade. Lila turned and saw him standing just a few feet away, his face tight with anger. James, you were just meddling where you weren't invited, he said, striding toward them with firm steps. Girls, put the box away and go inside now. But, Daddy, Ava began. Now, he repeated with an authority he rarely used on his daughters. Frightened by their father's tone, the twins quickly tucked the letters and photos back into the little box, buried it again, and ran to the house without looking back, leaving Lila and James alone under the tree. How dare you? James said as soon as the girls were out of sight. How dare you talk to them about their mother's death? James. They need to understand. They're 4 years old, he exploded. They don't need to understand anything except that they are loved and protected, but they're living in a fantasy. Lila shot back, rising to her feet. They're writing letters to someone who will never answer, waiting for a return that will never happen. And that's your problem? James stepped closer, invading her personal space. You've been here a week, and you think you can rewrite how I handle my daughter's grief. I'm not trying to rewrite anything. I'm trying to help. Help? He gave a humorless laugh. By destroying the last connection they have with their mother. They don't need to forget their mother. They need to accept that she's gone. Stop, James shouted, his eyes shining with pain. Stop acting like you know what's best for them. You don't know anything about us, about what we've been through, about what it's like to wake up every day knowing the most important person in your life is gone. Lila stayed silent, feeling the weight of his pain. You have no right, he continued, his voice lower now but still full of emotion. To bring that up, you have no right to interfere with how they deal with losing their mother. That's not your responsibility. Then whose is it? She asked gently. Mine, he replied. Only mine, and I decide when and how they'll deal with it. James turned to leave but stopped. From now on, you stick to meals and playtime. Don't talk about things you don't understand. He walked away, leaving Lila alone under the tree, her heart aching and one thing becoming clear. James wasn't just protecting his daughters. He was protecting himself. The mood at the Harrison mansion had been heavy since the argument in the garden. James barely looked at Lila, and she tried to keep things normal for the twins, who clearly felt the tension in the air. It was late Friday afternoon when everything fell apart. Lila was helping the girls with a puzzle in the living room when James got home earlier than usual. His firm footsteps echoed down the hallway, and when he appeared in the doorway, his face was tense. Girls, go play in your room, he said, not even glancing at Lila. But Daddy, we haven't finished the puzzle, Sophie protested. Now, he repeated in a tone that left no room for argument. The twins obeyed, but not before giving confused looks back and forth between their dad and the nanny. Once they were gone, James closed the door. We need to talk, he said. If this is about yesterday, it's about boundaries. James cut her off. I spoke to Dr. Lopez today. He told me a few things about non-traditional childcare methods. Lila frowned. What exactly did he say? That early exposure to adult realities can be traumatic for grieving children. That healthy fantasy is part of normal development, James. That untrained nannies sometimes do more harm than good when they try to help. He went on, each word hitting like a dagger. Lila felt her blood boil. Did he really say that? Or are you just hearing what you want to hear? I'm protecting my daughters. You're protecting yourself. She fired back, unable to hold back anymore. You're so afraid to face your own pain that you'd rather keep the girls in a bubble of make-believe. How dare you tell me how to raise my daughters? Because someone has to, Lila shouted. You barely talked to them. When was the last time you really asked how they were feeling? When was the last time you didn't run the moment they mentioned their mother? James's face turned red with anger. You don't know anything about me. I know you love those girls, but you're scared to love them fully because it would hurt too much to lose them too. Enough. James slammed his fist on the table, making a vase rattle. Enough. You've crossed the line. From upstairs, they heard a door slam, and the sound of hurried footsteps. They stopped shouting and looked up. "Sophie, Ava." James called. Silence. They ran up the stairs and found the girls' room empty. The window was open, the curtains fluttering in the wind. "Where are they?" James whispered, panic rising in his voice. "Sophie, Ava!" Lila shouted down the hallway. Nothing. The next few minutes were a blur of panic. James ran through the upstairs rooms, checking each one, while Lila ran downstairs to check the kitchen, the living room, the office. Mrs. Carter joined the search, as did Miguel and Elena. "They're not in the house," James yelled, coming down the stairs, pale-faced. "They're nowhere." "I'll check the garden," Miguel said, running out the door. "I'll look in the garage," Elena offered. "What if they left the property?" James whispered, his voice breaking. "What if someone took them?" Lila stopped and closed her eyes, trying to think like a 4-year-old. Where would two scared little girls go? Someplace safe? Someplace small and cozy where they could be together? "The kennel," she suddenly shouted. "What?" "The dog kennel at the back of the garden." Lila ran like she never had before, James right behind her. The kennel was in a remote corner of the property, surrounded by trees. The mansion's former owner had raised golden retrievers there, but it had been empty for years. When they got there, Lila heard the saddest sound in the world, quiet sobbing coming from inside the little wooden doghouse. "Sophie, Ava," she called softly, kneeling by the opening. Two little heads peeked out from the back of the playhouse, their faces streaked with tears. "Aunt Lila," Sophie whispered. "We're right here, sweethearts," Lila said, holding out her arms. "You can come out. Everything's okay. Daddy's mad at you because of us. Ava sobet, crawling out. It's our fault you fought. We don't want you to leave," Sophie cried, throwing herself into Lila's arms. James stood still, watching his daughters take comfort in Lila, feeling his heart break. "It's not your fault," Lila said, hugging them both. "It's never your fault when adults argue. Grown-ups sometimes say things they shouldn't when they're upset. But what if Daddy sends you away?" Ava asked. "What if we're alone again?" Sophie added. Lila looked at James over the girls' heads. He hadn't moved, but she could see the tears in his eyes. "You know what we're going to do," she said softly. "I'm going to sing the song my grandma used to sing to me when I was sad. It always worked." Lila pulled the girls closer and began to sing gently. The melody was sweet and a little sad, a Mexican lullaby about unconditional love and protection. Even though they didn't understand the words, the twins started to calm down, snuggling close to Lila. James watched, mesmerized. He had never seen his daughters settle down so quickly after crying. Lila's voice had something magical, something that touched not only the children but him, too. By the time the song ended, the girls were calm, breathing softly. "Shall we go home?" Lila asked gently. "Are you coming with us?" Sophie whispered. "Of course I am." James followed them back to the house in silence. He helped Lila bathe the girls, put their pajamas on, brush their little teeth. Through it all, he watched how Lila interacted with his daughters with endless patience, genuine affection, and a natural understanding of what they needed. After the girls had fallen asleep, James stood in the hallway for a long time, just looking at their bedroom door. It was nearly 11 at night when he knocked on Lila's door. "Come in," she said, surprised to see him. James stepped in slowly, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched like he was carrying the weight of the world. "How did you know where they were?" he asked. "Instinct. I tried to think like a scared little girl. They've never hidden from me before. They've never run from me when I got upset." Lila didn't respond. She just waited. James sat down in the armchair by the window, his face in his hands. "You were right today," he said, his voice muffled. "About everything, James, I don't know how to be a father anymore," he admitted, lifting his red eyes to her. "Since Emma died, I don't know how to be what they need. I'm afraid of doing it wrong, so I do nothing. I'm afraid to face their pain because I can barely handle my own." Lila felt her heart tighten, and today, when I saw you calm them down with just a simple psalm, I realized you did in 5 minutes what I haven't been able to do in 5 months. You're their father, James. You're what they need the most, but I don't know how to be that. I don't know how to be anything anymore except a broken man who lost the woman he loved. The silence between them was heavy with pain and raw honesty. "I don't know how to be a father anymore," he repeated, looking at her. "Will you teach me?" Saturday morning brought a completely different atmosphere to the Harrison mansion. For the first time since she arrived, Lila found James in the kitchen before her, still in pajamas, trying to figure out the coffee machine. "Good morning," she said, surprised. "Need some help?" "Please," he replied with a sheepish smile. Every time I try to make coffee, it turns out like muddy water. Lila laughed and stepped closer, showing him the right amount of grounds and water. Their fingers brushed briefly as she helped him position the carafe, and both felt a small spark. "Daddy!" the twins shouted together, appearing in the kitchen still in their nightgowns. "Why are you up so early?" "I thought I'd help make breakfast," James said, kneeling to hug them. "What do you think?" Sophie and Ava looked at each other, eyes wide with surprise and joy. "Really?" Ava asked. "Really. But I'm going to need help from both of you and Aunt Lila." And so began the first morning of real teamwork between them. James seemed surprisingly open to Lila's suggestions about the girls' routines. "They like helping with the cooking," Lila explained as she set out the ingredients for pancakes. "It makes them feel important, and it's good for their motor skills." "Makes sense," James agreed, watching Sophie stir the batter with complete focus. "I never thought of that. And Ava loves measuring things," Lila went on. "Look how focused she gets when she uses the measuring cup." James watched his younger daughter carefully count each spoonful of sugar, her tongue poking out in concentration. "How did you figure all this out about them?" he asked, genuinely curious. "By paying attention," Lila answered simply. "Every child has their own interests and talents. You just have to notice." At breakfast, James tried out one of Lila's suggestions. Everyone at the table shared one good thing they were looking forward to that day. "I want to build a pillow fort," Sophie announced. "I want to teach Daddy how to make my dancing robot," Ava said. "I want to learn," James said, looking at Lila. "Learn how to be a better father." Lila felt her heart tighten. "And you, Aunt Lila?" Sophie asked. "I want to see you happy. That's all I ever want." Later that afternoon, when James suggested they cook dinner together, Lila was surprised again. "Are you sure? Don't you have work?" "Work can wait," he said. "Lasagna's easy," Lila exclaimed. "And the girls can help with the grated cheese." The kitchen turned into a delightful, organized mess. James followed Lila's instructions closely, asking about each step. Their hands kept brushing against each other as they cooked. When he passed the sauce while she held the dish, when they both bent down at the same time to get something from the oven. When she corrected the way he chopped the tomatoes, "Like this," Lila said, placing her hands over his to guide the knife. Firm but gentle movements. James stopped breathing for a second. Her hands were warm and soft, and the sweet scent she wore was making his head spin. "Like this?" he asked, his voice a little rough. "Perfect," she whispered, only then realizing how close they were. Across the kitchen, Sophie nudged Ava and whispered in her ear. The two exchanged conspiratorial glances. "Aunt Lila," Sophie called innocently, "do you think Daddy's handsome?" Lila nearly dropped the bowl of sauce. "Sophie," James scolded, his face turning red. "It's just a question," Sophie protested. "Miguel said when grown-ups cook together and keep looking at each other, it's because Sophie Elizabeth Harrison," James interrupted, mortified. Ava giggled. "Miguel said it's because they like each other." "Girls," Lila said quickly, trying to change the subject, "why don't you set the table?" Later, after the girls went to take their baths, James and Lila finished making dinner in a comfortable but charged silence. "Sorry about the girls," James said as he sliced cheese. "They've been very observant lately." "They're smart kids," Lila replied, avoiding his gaze. "They notice everything." "Yeah, they do." James set down the knife and turned to her. "Lila, I wanted to tell you, you're different from anyone who's ever worked here." She stopped stirring the sauce. "Different? How?" "You don't treat this like just a job. You really care about them. And apparently, about me, too." Lila felt something stir in her chest, something dangerous yet wonderful. "James, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable," he said quickly. "It's just, you've brought life back into this house, to the girls, to me." Lila took a deep breath. She had to steer the conversation before her feelings got out of control. "You've been a wonderful father today," she said, focusing on the sauce. "The girls are glowing only because you showed me how. You just needed to remember how to connect with them. And you taught me that, too," James said, stepping closer. The moment was broken by giggles coming from the kitchen doorway. They turned and saw two little heads peeking in. "Are you spying on us?" James asked, pretending to be stern. "No." The twins lied in unison, running into the kitchen. "Aunt Lila," Sophie said, "do you want to join our secret club?" "What secret club?" "The Smart Kids Club," Ava answered with an important air. "And what does this club do?" The twins exchanged another look. "We solve problems," Sophie said vaguely. "What kind of problems?" "Problems adults have when they don't know they like each other." Ava replied with total innocence. James nearly choked. Girls, does Daddy like Aunt Lila? Sophie asked directly. She's our nanny, Sophie. That's not an answer, Ava pointed out, crossing her arms. And you, Aunt Lila? Sophie turned to her. Do you like Daddy? Lila looked at James, then at the girls, feeling cornered and unsure. I like the whole family, she said diplomatically. But do you like him? Sophie pressed. Sophie, that's enough, James said. Though his voice lacked conviction, Lila's heart started racing. The truth was, yes. She had started to feel something for James that went far beyond anything professional. The way he had opened up, how he was trying to be a better father. How he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, but it was risky. She was the nanny. He was the boss. The girls were vulnerable and had already lost their mother. What if things went wrong? I need to check the lasagna, she said, escaping the question in James's intense gaze. But as she opened the oven, Lila knew something between them had shifted irreversibly, and from the quiet giggles behind her, she could also tell that two very observant little girls had their own plans for the future of the family. The problem was, Lila wasn't sure if she was ready to be part of those plans. Monday arrived gray and rainy, with big drops tapping against the windows of the Harrison mansion. Lila expected a calm day indoors, maybe doing crafts with the girls or watching movies. But Sophie and Ava had other ideas. Aunt Lila, Sophie shouted, running to the living room window. Look at all that rain. It's the perfect day. Ava clapped her hands. Perfect for what, sweethearts? For the umbrella parade. They answered together. Lila raised an eyebrow. Umbrella parade. Mommy used to do it with us when it rained a lot, Sophie explained, her eyes shining with excitement. We take all the umbrellas in the house and parade around the garden. Each one picks a different color, Ava added, and we do model poses. Lila looked outside. The rain was steady, but there was no lightning, and the girls were so enthusiastic she didn't have the heart to say no. Okay, but only if Daddy says it's okay. Okay, what? James asked, stepping into the room. He'd come home early because of the weather. The umbrella parade, the girls explained again, rushing to hug him. Umbrella? James looked at Lila, confused. It was a tradition they had with their mom, she explained gently. They want to do it again. James hesitated. Any mention of Emma always made him uncomfortable. But in the past few weeks, he'd been trying to be more open to the memories his daughters had of her. It's raining pretty hard. Please, Daddy, Sophie pleaded. We promise to be careful, and you have to come, too. Ava said, pulling his hand. You've never done the umbrella parade. James looked at Lila, who shrugged with a smile. If you're okay with getting a little wet. Half an hour later, all four of them were standing at the front door in raincoats and boots. The girls had picked colorful umbrellas from the front closet. Sophie had a pink one with unicorns, and Ava chose a blue one covered in stars. What now? James asked, holding a plain black umbrella. Now you learn how to parade, Sophie said, opening her umbrella with dramatic flair. You have to walk like you're famous. Like this, Ava demonstrated, strutting down the hallway with exaggerated steps and model poses. Lila laughed, grabbing a red umbrella. I think I get it. It's like a fashion show in the rain, right? Exactly, the girls shouted. When they stepped into the garden, the rain greeted them with a cool, refreshing shower. The girls squealed with joy and immediately started their parade, walking along the stone path as if it were a runway in Paris. Look at me. Sophie twirled her umbrella like a ballerina. My turn. Ava struck a dramatic pose, leaning to one side. James watched his daughters, smiling in a way Lila rarely saw. There was something freeing about seeing him out there, soaked in rain, no suit, no schedule, just enjoying a simple moment with his girls. Your turn, Daddy, Sophie called out. I don't know how. Just walk and strike a pose, Ava instructed. James took a few hesitant steps, trying to mimic their exaggerated movements. He looked so awkward that Lila couldn't hold back her laughter. What are you laughing at? He asked, pretending to be offended. Your model walk, she said through her laughter. You look like a robot trying to dance. Oh, really? Then you show me, runway expert. Lila took the challenge. She walked down the path with smooth, playful movements, spinning the red umbrella and striking poses that made the twins clap and cheer. That's how it's done, she called to James. My turn again, he said, trying to copy her moves. He did better this time, and the girls shouted their approval. The game went on for several minutes, everyone taking turns on the wet runway, laughing harder each time. Then everything changed when James tried to pull off a fancy spin. His feet slipped on the wet grass, and he completely lost his balance. Instinctively, he reached out to catch himself and ended up grabbing Lila, who was standing beside him. They both fell, James landing underneath and breaking her fall. For a moment, they didn't move, breathing hard, their faces just inches apart. The rain kept falling, but now it felt soft, almost romantic. Lila's red umbrella had flown a few feet away, leaving them completely exposed. "Are you okay?" James whispered, his eyes scanning her face for any sign of injury. "I'm fine," Lila answered just as quietly. She was lying on his chest, feeling his heart racing against hers. Her wet hair fell like a curtain around their faces. They couldn't say who moved first. Maybe they moved at the same time, pulled by a magnetic force that had been building between them for weeks. The kiss started soft, almost cautious. Cold lips from the rain meeting, bringing sudden warmth. James cupped her face with one hand, deepening the kiss with a passion that surprised them both. For a few magical seconds, nothing else existed. No boss and nanny, no complications, no fear. Just James and Lila finally admitting something they'd been denying far too long. "Daddy! Aunt Lila!" the twins shouted, running toward them. "Are you hurt?" Reality hit like a slap. James pulled away so fast he nearly shoved Lila. He jumped to his feet, his expression shutting down instantly. "We're fine, girls," he said, his voice oddly cold. "We just slipped." Lila got up more slowly, still trying to process what had happened. His taste was still on her lips, but his expression had already changed completely. "Let's go inside," James said without looking at her. "You'll catch a cold." The girls obeyed, running ahead toward the house. James and Lila followed in silence, but the tension between them was now completely different. After the girls had taken warm baths and changed clothes, James asked Lila to meet him in the office. "Close the door," he said, his back to her as he looked out the window. Lila did as he asked, her heart still racing. "James, about what happened." "It was a mistake," he cut in, turning to face her with a stony look. "It shouldn't have happened. But you're their nanny." "That's it," he said, each word like a knife. "I'm your employer. There's a clear line between us, and I crossed it. It won't happen again." Lila felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "I understand," she managed to say, keeping her voice steady despite the pain. "From now on, we keep things professional. You take care of the girls, and I'll keep my distance. Simple as that. If that's what you want, it's what has to be." James turned back to the window, clearly ending the conversation. Lila walked out of the office on shaky legs, her heart in pieces, unaware that the moment she closed the door, James leaned his forehead against the cold glass, fighting the urge to run after her and apologize for being a coward. But he didn't run, and that would be the decision he'd regret the most. The 3 days that followed the kiss were the hardest Lila had faced since arriving at the Harrison mansion. James stuck to his word completely. He kept his distance, spoke only when necessary, and treated her with a polite coldness that hurt more than yelling ever could. The twins noticed the change right away. "Why doesn't Daddy eat dinner with us anymore?" Sophie asked on Wednesday, poking at the pasta Lila had made. "He said he has a lot of work," Lila answered, forcing a smile. "But he always had a lot of work," Ava pointed out. "He used to eat with us anyway." Lila didn't know what to say. How could she explain to 2 5-year-olds that their dad kissed the nanny and regretted it? "Did you and Daddy fight again?" Sophie pressed. "You don't talk to each other like you used to." "We didn't fight, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups just get busy." But the girls weren't fooled. They noticed the tension, the avoided eye contact, the way James left a room whenever Lila entered. On Thursday night, after putting the twins to bed, Lila made a decision she had been avoiding for days. She knocked on James's office door. "Come in," he said without looking up from his papers. "I need to talk to you. If it's about the girls' schedule, go ahead. It's about my resignation." James stopped writing, but still didn't look at her. "Your resignation? I'm leaving on Friday. I've already packed my things." At last, he raised his eyes, and for a brief moment, Lila saw something like panic flash through them. "The girls? The girls will be fine. You could hire another nanny, someone more suitable." "Lila, I've made up my mind." "James, I can't stay here any longer." She expected him to protest, to ask why, maybe even to beg her to reconsider. Instead, he simply nodded. "I understand. I'll arrange your payment." His indifference cut like a knife. Lila felt her eyes burn, but she held her ground. "There's one thing I'd like to ask." "What is it?" "That I can visit the girls sometimes, when you're not at home. They've grown attached to me. And I've grown attached to them, too. James was silent for a long moment. Visit whenever you like, he finally said. They'll miss you. Not we'll miss you. Not I'll miss you. Just they'll. Thank you, Lila murmured, leaving before the tears could fall. Friday morning came with a heavy mood in the house. Lila tried to keep things normal, making breakfast for the twins as always. But they sensed something was wrong. Why are you sad, Aunt Lila? Ava asked, climbing into her lap. I'm not sad, sweetheart. Just a little tired. Are you going away again today? Sophie wanted to know. Lila's heart tightened. It was time to tell them the truth. Girls, come sit with me. I need to talk to you. The two of them sat next to her on the living room couch, their faces serious and attentive. You know Aunt Lila loves you very much, right? We know, they answered in unison. And you know that sometimes people have to leave, even when they don't want to. The smile vanished from Sophie's face. You're leaving? I am, darling. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. No, Ava cried, throwing herself into her arms. You can't go. You're part of our family. Please don't go, Sophie sobbed. Did we do something wrong? Lila hugged them both, fighting back her own tears. You didn't do anything wrong. You're the most wonderful children in the world. It's just that sometimes grown-ups have to make difficult decisions. Is it because of Daddy? Sophie asked with wisdom beyond her 4 years. Is it because you kissed in the garden? Lila was speechless. They had seen. We saw through the window, Ava explained. And then Daddy got weird. Is it his fault you're leaving? It's nobody's fault, my love. Sometimes things just don't work out. The twins spent the entire day trying to convince Lila to stay. They made drawings for her, promised to behave even better, even offered their favorite toys as a bribe. What if we talk to Daddy? Sophie suggested. We can convince him to say sorry. No, sweetheart. The decision's already made. But we don't want you to go, Ava insisted, her eyes red from crying. James only appeared at lunchtime, greeted his daughters coolly, and didn't look at Lila at all. The girls ran to him. Daddy, you can't let Aunt Lila leave, Sophie pleaded. Please tell her to stay, Ava begged. James glanced briefly at Lila, who was standing in the kitchen doorway. Aunt Lila made a decision. We have to respect it. But Daddy, that's enough, girls. Let's have lunch. Lila saw the confusion and hurt on the twins' little faces, and her heart shattered even more. Late in the afternoon, while the girls napped, Lila prepared 2 letters. She wrote one for each twin, trying to explain in a way they could understand that her leaving had nothing to do with them. For Sophie, she wrote about what an amazing artist she was, and how she should keep drawing magical worlds. For Ava, she spoke about her special gift for building things, and how she would be a famous inventor one day. In both letters, she promised she would always love them, and would visit whenever she could. She left the letters on the girls' pillows and picked up her suitcase. James wasn't home when she left. He had probably planned it that way. Lila took one last look at the mansion that had been her home for a few precious weeks, and walked away with a broken heart. 2 hours later, the twins woke up from their nap and found the letters. After Mrs. Carter read them aloud, they finally understood that Lila was truly gone. The sound of the girls crying echoed through the whole house. James was in his office when he heard the sobs. He ran upstairs and found the 2 of them in their room, hugging each other and crying like their world had just ended. What happened? He asked, kneeling down in front of them. Aunt Lila's gone, Sophie sobbed, holding out the crumpled letter. For good. Why did you let her go? Ava asked, looking at her father with a mix of sadness and anger he had never seen before. Why didn't you ask her to stay? James took the letters and read them. Every word Lila had written was filled with real love for the girls, and he realized just how much he had lost. Why are you letting her go? Sophie asked again, hitting her little fists against his chest. Don't you love her too? And for the first time, James admitted to himself the truth he'd been trying to ignore. Yes, he did love Lila, and he had let fear ruin the best thing that had happened to him since Emma passed away. I made a mistake, girls, he whispered, pulling them both into a hug. Daddy made a really big mistake. A week had passed since Lila left, and the Harrison mansion seemed to have lost all its color. The twins ate without interest, played quietly, and kept asking when Aunt Lila was coming back to visit. James had hired a temporary nanny, Mrs. Thompson, a serious and efficient woman who cared for the girls with perfect professionalism. She never burned the pancakes, never left a mess, and never sang during bath time. She was flawless on paper, and the girls hated her. She doesn't do funny voices when she reads stories, Sophie complained during Monday's breakfast. And she doesn't let us help in the kitchen, Ava added, poking at the perfectly cooked eggs Mrs. Thompson had made. James watched his daughters, not knowing what to say. Every day, it became more obvious just how big a hole Lila had left in their lives. Not just in the girls' lives, his too. "Daddy," Ava said suddenly, "do you remember the dance recital is today at school?" James's heart skipped a beat. The recital. How had he forgotten? "Of course I remember, sweetheart," he lied. "I'm really excited to see you dance. Aunt Lila was going to come with you," Sophie said sadly. "She promised." James swallowed hard. Lila had promised she'd be there, and now the girls would have to go on stage without the person who always gave them the most encouragement. That afternoon, James arrived at Pine Valley Elementary School, wearing his best suit. The auditorium was full of proud parents, holding cameras and phones. He found a seat in the third row and waited. The recital began with the older kids, little dancers, 5 and 6 years old, performed with adorable grace, earning warm applause from the audience. Finally, it was the twins' class. James's chest tightened when he saw Sophie and Ava walk on stage, wearing pink and blue tutus, respectively. The music began, an instrumental version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and the kids started the simple choreography they'd been practicing for weeks. Sophie was doing great, her movements smooth and confident, but Ava was standing still in the middle of the stage, looking around the audience with panic in her eyes. She was searching for someone who clearly wasn't there. James sat up straighter in his chair, trying to get her attention. Ava saw him and waved, but didn't move. The other kids danced around her, but she stood like a statue. The dance teacher motioned discreetly from the wings, trying to encourage her to join in. The music kept playing, but Ava was clearly overwhelmed. James couldn't take it anymore. He stood and walked over to the side of the stage where he could speak softly to his daughter. "Ava, sweetheart, you can do this," he whispered. "Daddy's right here. You can dance." Ava looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I want Aunt Lila," she said, loud enough for several people in the audience to hear. James's heart broke. He looked at his daughter, then at Sophie, who had stopped dancing and was watching her sister with concern. "Aunt Lila can't come today, honey. But Daddy's here." "I want Aunt Lila," Ava said again, now crying openly. She promised. The music kept playing. The other kids danced awkwardly, and the whole scene was becoming uncomfortable for everyone. James made a desperate decision. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number he knew by heart. "Hello?" Lila's voice came through on the other end. "Lila, it's me. I know I don't have the right to call, but I need you. Ava is on stage at school, and she panicked. She's asking for you." There was a pause. "Where?" "Pine Valley Elementary Auditorium. Please, I'm 10 minutes away. Hang in there." The call ended. James put the phone away and turned back to Ava. "Aunt Lila is coming, sweetheart. Just hang in there a little longer." Ava stopped crying, but she still didn't move. The teacher decided to pause the music and announce a short break while the other kids stepped off stage. James walked onto the stage and picked Ava up, carrying her backstage where Sophie was waiting. "She's really coming, Daddy?" Sophie asked. "She is." And she did. 8 minutes later, James saw a familiar figure hurrying into the auditorium. Lila was wearing a simple dress, her hair loose as if she had rushed out of the house. Her eyes scanned the stage right away. James waved to her from the wings, and when Ava spotted her, her face lit up completely. "Aunt Lila," she shouted, running onto the stage. Lila quickly climbed the side steps and knelt down to catch Ava in her arms. "I'm here, sweetheart," she whispered. "Sorry I was late. I couldn't dance without you," Ava sobbed. "But now I'm here, and you're going to shine out there, okay?" Lila looked at Sophie, who had also rushed over for a hug. "You two look beautiful," she said, adjusting their tutus. "Ready to show everyone how well you can dance?" The twins nodded eagerly. The teacher came over, clearly relieved. "Can we start again?" "Yes," Lila replied. "They're ready now." Lila stepped off the stage and found a seat in the front row. The music started again, and this time both Sophie and Ava danced perfectly. Their movements were graceful and confident, and they smiled brightly at Lila the whole time. When the music ended, the audience burst into applause. The twins took their bows and waved straight at Lila, who was standing and clapping with tears in her eyes. After the recital, as families gathered in the school courtyard, James walked over to Lila. She was crouched down, talking to the twins. When he arrived, "Girls," he said, "go grab your jackets. I need to talk to Aunt Lila for a moment." The girls obeyed, but not before giving Lila one more round of hugs. James and Lila were alone in the courtyard, a heavy silence between them. "Thank you," he said finally. for coming. I know you didn't have to. Of course I did. She interrupted. I promised them I'd be there. Leela. James took a deep breath. The girls need you. They haven't been the same since you left. They're not eating well, not playing like they used to. They're not smiling, James. And me, too, he said, the words tumbling out. I need you too. The house feels empty without you. I wake up thinking about your smile and fall asleep hearing your laugh. I made a huge mistake letting you go. Lila said nothing, trying to process. Please, he continued, his voice cracking a little. Come back home. Come back to us. Lila looked at him, then at the twins running through the courtyard, then back at him again. James, you made it very clear I was just the nanny, that there was a line between us that couldn't be crossed. I was scared, he admitted. Scared to open up again. Scared to be happy. Scared you'd leave like Emma did. So, I pushed you away before you could hurt me. And now I know I'm already hurting. Being without you hurts so much more than taking the risk of having you and losing you. Lila looked into his eyes and saw honesty, vulnerability, and something she dared to call love. But she didn't answer. Not yet. After the recital, Lila had agreed to come home with them just for dinner. But James could tell from her eyes she was still deciding if she would really stay. During the drive, the twins chattered non-stop about the performance. How happy they were that Lila had come back, and how the new nanny couldn't even make a decent sandwich. Lila laughed at their stories, but James noticed how she avoided looking directly at him. When they got home, James made a decision. Girls, Aunt Lila is staying for dinner. How about you draw something special for her while I cook? You're cooking? Sophie asked, surprised. I'm going to try, he said with a nervous smile. I can help, Lila offered. No, he said quickly. I mean, tonight I want to cook for you. It's the least I can do after everything. Lila sat in the living room with the twins while James headed to the kitchen, absolutely terrified. He could make coffee and toast, maybe scrambled eggs, but a special dinner? That was uncharted territory. He opened the fridge and studied the options. There were fresh ingredients Mrs. Thompson had bought, but James had no idea how to turn them into anything edible, let alone something special. He took a deep breath and decided to give it a try. After all, how wrong could it go? An hour later, the kitchen looked like it had been hit by a tornado. James was covered in flour, had burned the first batch of chicken, and the pasta sauce had stuck so badly to the pan that he had to start over. Need some help? Lila asked, appearing in the doorway. Everything's under control, he lied, trying to hide the smoke coming from the oven. Lila laughed, that warm, familiar laugh he had missed so much. James, you've got flour in your hair, and whatever that is, it's burning. Yeah, okay, maybe I could use a little help. They cooked together side by side, just like they had that night that now felt so far away. But this time was different. James was clearly nervous, dropping things, mismeasuring ingredients, talking too much. Are you okay? Lila asked, watching him pour salt where sugar should have gone. I'm fine. Why do you ask? I'm always like this. Totally normal. Nothing unusual here. Lila watched him with amusement. James, you're trying to season the fruit salad with salt. He looked down and saw that he was, in fact, doing exactly that. Oh, it's a new recipe I saw online. Of course it is, she said, smiling. When they finally managed to make something edible, a simple pasta with tomato sauce and a salad that wasn't salted, they called the twins for dinner. During the meal, James was clearly rehearsing something in his head. He would open his mouth to speak, then close it again, clear his throat, start a sentence about the weather, then stop halfway. Daddy, you're acting weird, Ava observed. Weird? How? You're talking to yourself, Sophie said. We heard you practicing something in the bathroom. James's face turned red. I wasn't practicing anything. I was just working on a presentation for work. In the bathroom? Ava asked, doubtful. It's a very inspiring place. Lila was clearly enjoying his discomfort. After dinner, while Lila helped the girls brush their teeth, James tried to calm himself down. He had planned a whole speech, but now all the words had left his mind. When they came downstairs, the twins were holding something behind their backs. Aunt Lila, Sophie said solemnly, we made something for you. And for Daddy too, Ava added. They revealed a big drawing on brown paper. It showed a stick figure family. James, Lila, Sophie, and Ava, all holding hands in front of the mansion. Underneath, written in colorful, slightly crooked letters, were the words, Our family forever. It's beautiful, Lila exclaimed, genuinely moved. There's also a question, Sophie said, pointing to something written in smaller letters. Lila bent down to read. Will you be our mom, too? Silence filled the air. Lila looked at the twins, then at James, who had gone pale. Girls, he began. It's what I wanted to ask too, he interrupted, surprising even himself. Lila blinked. What? James took a deep breath. It was now or never. Lila. He swallowed hard. You've turned our house into a home. You've made my daughters happy again. You've made me a man who remembers how to smile. He stepped closer, the twins watching with wide eyes. I love you, he said simply. I love you in a way I didn't know was still possible. And I know it's crazy. I know we haven't known each other for long. But to everyone's surprise, he knelt right there in the living room. From his pocket, he pulled out a simple ring, a white gold band with a small diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. Will you stay with us forever? He asked, his voice trembling, not just as a nanny, but as family. The twins held their breath. Lila looked at the man kneeling in front of her, then at the two little girls she already loved as her own, then back at James. I love you too, she said, tears now streaming freely. I love all three of you more than I ever thought possible. Is that a yes? James asked, hopeful. It's a yes, she replied, extending her hand. James slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood and kissed her softly as Sophie and Ava squealed with joy. We're going to be a real family, Sophie shouted. Forever, Ava added, and there, in the Harrison Mansion living room, surrounded by the twins' laughter, James and Lila knew they had found something worth more than any treasure, a true love born from the desire to care, grown through the courage to open up, and made eternal by the promise never to be apart again. 2 weeks after the proposal, the Harrison Mansion was buzzing with activity, not the elegant and controlled kind James usually preferred, but the delightful chaos only a party planned by 2 4-year-old girls could create. Aunt Lila, Sophie yelled, running into the kitchen with a tutu over her pajamas. Is the priest here yet? Not yet, sweetheart, Lila replied, trying not to burn the homemade brigadeiros she insisted on making for the wedding. But he'll be here soon. Are you sure you can get married in a flower dress? Ava asked, appearing with a crooked tiara on her head. Grandma Eleanor said brides have to wear white dresses and big veils. Lila smiled. Eleanor Harrison had shown up 3 days earlier, clearly unhappy with how fast the wedding was happening, but doing her best to hide it for the sake of the grandkids. She still didn't fully approve of Lila, but had noticed how happy the twins were and how James was smiling again. Your grandma is right about the tradition, Lila said, kneeling down to fix Ava's tiara. But you two picked the party theme, remember? And at a pajama party, the bride can wear whatever she wants. The whole pajama party wedding idea had started when the girls found out it was going to be a small ceremony just in the backyard. They were disappointed there wouldn't be a real party until Lila suggested doing the kind of party they loved the most. But if it's a pajama party, why aren't you getting married in pajamas? Sophie insisted, because even at a pajama party, the bride has to look a little fancy. Lila explained, but I promise, after the ceremony, I'll change, and we'll have a pillow fight. The girls squealed with joy and ran off to tell their dad. Lila looked around the kitchen. The brigadeiros were cooling. A simple chocolate cake was decorated with edible flowers, and heart-shaped sandwiches were neatly arranged. It wasn't the kind of wedding many girls dreamed of, but it was perfect for them. Out in the garden, James was overseeing the final touches. Simple chairs arranged in a semicircle, a wildflower arch Lila insisted on making herself, and colorful pillows scattered around the grass for anyone who preferred to sit on the ground. Mr. Harrison, said Miguel, the driver, approaching with a smile. The decorations look beautiful. Different, but beautiful. They really do, James agreed, looking at the colorful garlands the twins had made. Never thought I'd get married at a pajama party. But, oh, it's perfect, said Mrs. Carter, appearing with more pillows. I've never seen so much joy in this house. James smiled. It was true. In the 2 weeks since the proposal, the mansion had become a completely different place. Constant laughter, music always playing, and a real sense of family he hadn't felt in years. Guests began to arrive. Dr. Lopez and his wife, a few of James's close colleagues, Lila's family, who had traveled from Mexico for the wedding, and of course, Eleanor. She wore an elegant navy blue dress. Her only nod to the pajama party theme was a colorful scarf. James, Eleanor said, kissing her son's cheek, I hope you know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, Mom, he replied with a confidence that surprised her. I'm marrying the woman who brought our family back to life. Eleanor looked around, taking in the unusual decorations. The kids running around in pajamas, the adults chatting happily on pillows in the grass. "It's not what I imagined for you," she admitted. "It's not what I imagined for myself either," James said. "But it's perfect." When the priest arrived, a young, laid-back man who had gladly agreed to the informal ceremony, everyone gathered in the garden. The twins, as official flower girls, walked down the petal-covered path, tossing even more petals everywhere and waving to the guests like little celebrities. Then the music started. It wasn't the traditional wedding march, but the Mexican lullaby Lila always sang to calm the girls. Duermet. Mi alma played gently on a guitar. The melody was soft and full of love, echoing through the garden, and then Lila appeared. She was wearing a simple floral cotton dress with yellow and blue flowers that matched the garden perfectly. Her hair was down with a few natural flowers woven in, and she held a bouquet of daisies she'd picked that morning from the garden. James felt his breath catch. She looked radiant, natural, perfect. Lila walked over to him, smiling, stopping along the way to hug the twins. When she finally reached the small makeshift altar, James took her hands. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "So do you," she replied, laughing as she noticed he had agreed to wear just a light dress shirt and linen pants. Notai. The ceremony was simple and full of love. The priest spoke about family, about how love can heal wounds and bring new beginnings. James and Lila exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to love and care not only for each other but for the girls as well. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," James gently held Lila's face and kissed her softly as the guests applauded and the twins cheered with joy. The party that followed was exactly what you'd expect from a grown-up pajama party. Everyone sat on the grass, ate brigadeiros with their hands, laughed at funny stories told by the guests, and watched the twins perform a special dance they had rehearsed. As the sun began to set, Lila had changed into pajamas just like the girls and was sitting on the grass having a pillow fight with Sophie while James and Ava built a pillow fort. "Aunt Lila," Ava said suddenly, pausing her pillow stacking and looking around the yard. "Yes, sweetheart? This is the first time everyone in our house is smiling at the same time." Lila followed the girl's gaze. Eleanor was laughing at something Dr. Lopez had said. James was helping Sophie aim a pillow at Miguel. Mrs. Carter was taking pictures with her phone, smiling more than Lila had ever seen her. "You know what, Ava?" Lila said, pulling the girl into a hug. "It won't be the last. Promise. I promise. Starting today, our house will always be full of smiles." James had heard their conversation and walked over, wrapping all three of them in a hug. "Always," he agreed, kissing the top of Lila's head. "Forever." And there, in the Harrison Mansion garden, surrounded by scattered pillows, chocolate treats, and toys everywhere, the family that had come together through love, patience, and many dancing pancakes knew they had found something money could never buy. A real home built not with bricks and cement, but with laughter, hugs, and the certainty that no matter what happened, they would always have each other.